Welcome to our deep dive. We've got some amazing Buddhist texts about mindfulness of breath, and I'm excited to dig into them with you.
Yeah, these ancient teachings are so relevant even today. It's amazing how they recognize the power of the breath, to unlock well-being and deep insight, even back then.
Absolutely. Let's jump right in. These texts give us incredibly detailed instructions on how to practice this mindfulness of breath. And I was struck by how much emphasis they put on, like, setting the stage. It's not just any quiet corner. They're talking about forests and being at the foot of a tree or finding an empty hut.
It really is about intentionally creating the right space for inner stillness. The texts talk about how important posture is. Sitting up straight, legs crossed, body at rest, and focusing your attention in front of you. It's like you're building a solid foundation for the mind to settle.
That's interesting how physical posture and mental focus are tied together like that. Then they talk about shifting attention to the breath itself. And these texts don't just say, pay attention to your breath. They go way deeper than that. They even describe how to notice if your breath is long or short, how to focus on your whole body as you're breathing, and how to use the breath to tranquilize the bodily formation.
Right.
Now, that phrase, tranquilizing the bodily formation, it might sound a little mystical or something.
Yeah.
But what it really means is, that calming effect your breath can have on, like, physical sensations and energy.
It's like becoming so aware of your breath that you actually start to experience a sense of ease and stillness throughout your whole body. But it's not just relaxing. The texts describe how the breath can lead to really deep joy and pleasure, and even insights into how the mind itself
I
works.
love that. Just breathing can unlock those deeper states of awareness. And, speaking of insights, these texts talk about some pretty incredible benefits that the Buddha experienced himself through this practice.
That's right, like reduced fatigue in the body and the eyes. Think about that. A practice that makes you feel more energized and alert instead of drained.
It's almost like the opposite of what we think in our, busy world.
Hmm.
The texts also mention freedom from something they call defilements, which might sound a little uh, outdated.
It's a term that refers to the states of mind that cloud our perception and cause suffering, anger, jealousy, greed, anxiety.
Oh, okay.
These are like mental habits that keep us stuck in those cycles of reacting and unhappiness.
So basically what the texts are saying is by practicing mindfulness of breath, we can kind of loosen the grip those negative mental patterns have on us.
Yeah,
This is kind of like what we're learning now in modern psychology about mindfulness, right?
totally. By learning to just observe our thoughts and emotions without judging them, we can lessen their power over us. It's like we're creating a space between us and our reactions. And that space allows us to respond to challenges with more wisdom and clarity.
So much to think about already, and we're just getting started. Before we dive into the next part of this practice, I'd love to hear from you, the listeners. What really resonates with you about this practice so far? What challenges do you think you might face trying to bring this level of attention to your own breath?
It's really amazing how mindfulness of breath, something so simple, can be this gateway to such profound transformation. It's not just about calming the mind and the body like we talked about.
Yeah, that's what's really grabbing my attention here. There's that deeper level to it. Like the idea that being aware of your breath can actually lead to what they call awakening or enlightenment in these texts. Those are some pretty big words.
Yeah, they really are, and they point to a fundamental shift in how we see ourselves and how we experience the world. The text suggests that if you practice mindfulness of breath consistently, you're actually cultivating what they call the seven awakening factors.
7 awakening factors. Okay, I'm really intrigued. Tell me more about these factors and how they connect to mindfulness of breath.
Okay, so the seven awakening factors are mindfulness, investigation of principles, energy, rapture, tranquility, immersion, and equanimity. Now, these aren't just random states of mind. They're qualities that, when you develop them, actually lead to a much deeper understanding of reality and freedom from suffering.
All right, well, that's quite a list. Let's break it down a bit. How does mindfulness of breath help you cultivate each of these awakening factors?
So the first factor, mindfulness, is really the foundation. By paying attention to your breath, you're already cultivating mindfulness, right? You're training your mind to be present, to observe what's going on when we're getting lost in thought or distracted by things.
So just the act of focusing on your breath is already making you more mindful in general.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, what about investigation of principles? That one sounds a little intense.
It might sound that way, but it's really about cultivating a curious and discerning mind. So as you're practicing breath awareness, you might start noticing patterns, how your breath changes when you're feeling different emotions, how it's connected to what's happening in your body, how it's always changing, always impermanent. That natural curiosity is the beginning of investigation.
So it's like mindfulness opens the door, and then investigation is what allows you to step through and really explore.
Exactly.
I like that. And then there's energy. How does being mindful of your breath cultivate energy? You'd think it'd be the opposite, like more relaxing, or maybe you make you sleepy?
You might think that, but the texts are talking about a different kind of energy, not the kind you get from caffeine or stress, but a joyful, radiant kind of energy. And it comes naturally from consistently doing this mindfulness practice. As you get more familiar with your breath, you might start to feel this enthusiasm and delight, and it kind of propels you further along.
It's that feeling of being fully engaged and present, right? Like a natural motivation that comes from within. Okay, that makes sense. So we've covered mindfulness, investigation, and energy. What about those other factors?
Well, as that energy builds and you keep practicing, you might start experiencing moments of rapture, like a deep sense of joy or bliss. And that rapture can then lead to tranquility, which is this deep calmness and peace that fills your mind and body.
Sounds like a pretty nice cascade, each factor building on the one before it.
Exactly. And from that tranquility, immersion just kind of arises naturally. It's a state of really deep concentration where your mind becomes totally absorbed in the breath. All those distractions just fade away. And there's only this profound stillness and clarity.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And finally, there's equanimity.
Equanimity comes out of that deep state of immersion. It's this balanced state of mind that isn't disturbed by all the ups and downs that life throws at you. And it's not about suppressing your emotions or anything like that. It's more about developing a spacious awareness that lets you experience your emotions without being completely swept away by them.
So it's about building inner resilience. That's incredible. To think that all of these qualities can come from something as basic as paying attention to your breath makes me wonder how we might actually experience these awakening factors in our day-to-day lives, even when we're not formally meditating. What do you think?
That's a great question. It's about recognizing how these qualities might show up in everyday situations. Like mindfulness could be that moment you catch yourself before you react impulsively to something. Investigation of principles could be approaching a problem with a sense of curiosity instead of immediately judging it. And energy could be that surge of enthusiasm you feel when you're working on something that's really meaningful to you.
I see what you mean. It's about connecting these sort of abstract ideas to what we actually experience in our lives.
Exactly. And what's so beautiful about these awakening factors is that they're all interconnected. As you cultivate one, the others naturally start to grow stronger as well.
It's like a positive feedback loop, a virtuous cycle of sorts.
I love that. That's a great way to put it. And, these awakening factors, as powerful as they are, aren't actually the ultimate goal. According to the texts, they're more like stepping stones to something even more profound.
Okay, now I'm really hooked. What's the final destination on this journey of breath awareness?
Well, the texts say that the 7 awakening factors ultimately lead to 2 really remarkable fruits: true knowledge and deliverance.
Now we're getting to the heart of it, but you know what? I think this is a good place to pause and let everyone listening really absorb all of this. We've covered a lot of ground. Okay, so we explored how being mindful of your breath can cultivate these really amazing qualities, the 7 awakening factors. But you were saying that those factors are actually a path to something even greater: true knowledge and deliverance. What do those even mean in the context of these Buddhist teachings?
That's where it gets really interesting. True knowledge, like they describe it in these texts, isn't just about learning facts or information. It's more about seeing reality as it actually is, without all the distortion from our own ideas and biases. It's realizing that everything is impermanent, that everything's connected, and that this idea of a separate self is kind of an illusion.
It's like you're taking off a pair of glasses that's been blurring your vision,
Exactly.
and you can see everything with fresh eyes. And what about deliverance?
So deliverance in Buddhism means freedom from suffering. It's about freeing yourself from always craving and being averse to things and being attached to things that keep us stuck in these states of being that just aren't satisfying.
Freedom from suffering. That's a powerful idea. But how does being mindful of your breath and cultivating those 7 awakening factors actually lead to that kind of liberation? Seems like a big jump.
Well, they use a really powerful analogy in the text to explain this. They call it the simile of the lamp. So just like a lamp goes out when it runs out of fuel, that clinging to pleasant feelings disappears when we recognize that those feelings don't last.
So basically, by developing mindfulness, we start to see that everything is constantly changing, including our thoughts and feelings. And that understanding helps us let go of them a little bit.
Exactly. We begin to realize that holding on to those fleeting experiences is actually what's causing the suffering. The more we try to grasp onto things, the more we struggle. But mindfulness of breath, by its very nature, is training us to be present with those changes, to just watch them come and go without resisting them. And that cultivates a sense of inner freedom.
It makes sense. It's not about pretending you don't feel pleasure or trying to force yourself to feel a certain way. It's more about having a different relationship with your experiences.
That's it. And as we become less attached to things, we naturally become less reactive, less caught up in everything that our minds are making up. And that's where those awakening factors come in. They help strengthen our wisdom, our clarity, and our equanimity so we can handle life's challenges with more grace and skill.
Like a ripple effect. Mindfulness of your breath ripples outward, changing how you exist in the world. The texts even talk about a state called non-return, where someone reaches a point where they're no longer reborn into that cycle of suffering.
Yeah, the idea of non-return is pointing to the ultimate liberation that this path can lead to. It's a state of complete freedom from all those limitations of conditioned existence.
Wow. It's incredible that something as simple as paying attention to your breath can have such a huge impact.
And that's the beauty of it. Anyone can do it, no matter what their background is or what they believe in.
We started with just one breath, and look where it led us. From practical things like having more energy and focus, to these profound insights about what reality is and how to be free from suffering. I think the biggest takeaway from this deep dive is that it's an invitation to really explore mindfulness of breath for yourself. What are you holding on to that might be stopping you from having more peace and freedom in your life? Maybe it's a thought, a feeling, an idea, or even something material. As you bring your awareness to your breath, think about that question and see what comes up. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time.